Well, good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Are you hot enough out here?
Yeah.
Yes? Are you hot enough?
It's good. It's a little bit.
All right, well, I'm not going to be too long tonight. Jay asked me to come out, and I really am appreciative of what he's trying to do. So much that I actually came out. I told Jay over the phone, I said, I don't do people. I've been working from home since last March, and so I really don't come out. And I said over the phone, I said, I'm about 85% sure that I'll come. And he was like, oh, what does that mean? So I'm here tonight really because I value what he's doing. I feel like it's incredibly important for our community, especially people who are melanated. If you're not sure if you're melanated, you're black or you're brown, okay? We really have to start talking about mental health in our community. We have to start talking about the signs and symptoms. We have to start talking about suicide. We also have to talk about recovery, treatment, early identification, but also prevention. And so before I get too deep into what I want to say tonight, I want to bring it home. Because oftentimes in our community, we talk about the fact that we as black folk, we don't experience mental health concerns. We've come through 400 years, right? Slavery, all the things, the civil rights community era, and we say we are a strong people, and we are. But that does not take away the fact that we can deal with mental health concerns. It doesn't take away the fact that we can struggle with suicidal thought, and it doesn't take away the fact that we are dying by suicide. We have to do something about this. We have to address it. And so I want to bring it home. I'm going to read some names to you. Big Sean, Serena Williams, Naomi Osaka, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, Michelle Williams, Beyonce, T-Pain, Janet Jackson, Taraji P. Henson, Tierra Mowry, Lizzo, Karamo Brown, Halle Berry, Marcus and Markeith McCullough, Simone Biles, Meek Mills, and I could go on and on and on. What do you think that list of names has in common? Anybody? What do you think that list of names has in common?
Celebrities that deal with their mental health.
They're all celebrities and athletes that deal with mental health, right? It's not just everyday folks. I know Jay is an athlete, he's a coach, right? We see it across all of these communities. These are individuals who have come forward to tell the community, hey, I deal with anxiety, I deal with depression, I deal with PTSD, I deal with bipolar disorder, I've had suicidal thoughts. We need people to continue to talk. Why? Mental health concerns are incredibly common, but yet we don't talk about them. They're so common that 1 in 5 of us will have a diagnosable mental health concern in any given year. If I had you all to go across this patio and count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would represent what it looks like across our community in terms of how many people are dealing with mental health concerns. Over 50 million people in our community are dealing with mental health concerns. Anxiety disorders, 18% of our community deals with anxiety disorders of some sort. Nearly 8% of our community deals with some form of depression. These are the top 2 categories of mental health concerns. If you had to guess how many people in our community die by suicide every year, what number would you throw out there? Anybody want to throw out a number?
10%.
10%? Give me an actual number.
400.
400? Anybody else? 2,000? So in the state of North Carolina, 1,525 individuals lost their lives to suicide. Across the United States, 48,344 people have died by suicide. That's roughly one person dying every 10.7 seconds. Every 10.7 seconds across this country, someone is dying by suicide. Suicide is actually the 10th leading cause of death. Did you all know that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death? That's for adults. How many of you are parents? How many of you that are parents have a child between the age of 10 and 24 years old? How many of you here are between the ages of 10 and 24 years old? For 10 to 24-year-olds across our country, suicide is the second leading cause of death. The second. The only thing that's ahead of suicide as a cause of death for that age group are accidents, car accidents, right? Does that not tell you we need to do something? We need to talk about this. How many of you watch the news every single night? Anybody watch the news? What do you hear about on the news? Speak up, I'm hard of hearing. You hear about homicides, murders, shootings. You hear about that every single night. How many people do you think we lose to homicide in this country each year? Take a guess. Say it again. Thousands? So you heard me say earlier, we lose 48,344 people to suicide. In the U.S., on average, between 19,000 and 21,000 people die by homicide. So what I'm saying to you is more than twice the number of people are dying by suicide than by homicide. And we hear about murder and homicide on the news every single night. When's the last time you heard about a suicide on the news that wasn't someone who was famous? You don't. And so I'm telling you this not to bring you down, not to dampen the mood, but to really let you know we have an urgency. There needs to be an urgency because we're losing lives. But not only that, individuals who are living with mental health concerns, you heard me say earlier, 1 in 5, right? Over 50 million people. Only 41% of those individuals are seeking any type of support. So that means 59% aren't getting counseling, they're not talking to their spouse or partner, they're not going to their EAP, their employee assistance program, they're not sharing it with their friends, they're suffering in silence. A big part of that is because of stigma. They don't want to be judged, they don't want to be labeled, they don't want people to call them cray-cray, crazy, nuts, all the things that we do, right? How many of you have ever heard someone use a mental health diagnosis as an adjective or a noun? I heard someone say the other day, oh, this weather's so bipolar. And I said, well, damn. That's what we're doing? We have to destigmatize mental health concerns because when we do things like that, people don't want to ask for help because they feel that they'll be judged. Let me tell you a little bit about me. My man here, as he was reading the yellow, he told you I was the Director of Education and Advocacy with Mental Health America, and I am. I spend most of my days teaching people how to recognize the signs and symptoms of a mental health concern. I teach people how to recognize if someone is having suicidal thought. But more than recognizing, I teach them, what can you do? If your sister, your friend, your coworker, your church member, your pastor, your child comes to you and says, I was crying for 3 hours last night, and I don't know why, right? If they say to you, I don't feel like I can get out of bed today. If they say to you, I have anxiety, and every time I have a panic attack, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. Does anybody know what to do if someone close to you says that? Most of the time, we're doing what we're doing right now. We're silent because we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And we need people to know what to say. how to talk about this with people. In addition to what I do professionally, I live with a mental health concern. For most of my adult life, I have lived with a mental health concern. A part of how that manifests for me, I experience depression. I experience anxiety. Right? This is my husband. We've been together 30 years. He sees the ups and the downs. He can tell you there are days, yeah, give it up for him. He's got a hard job. He can tell you there are days that I can't get out of the bed. He sees that, but the world may not see that. He can tell you there are days when I have panic attacks. He's learning what to do when that happens. But when people are living with mental health concerns, they need to have a village around them to support them, to help them stay accountable so that they can be healthy, so that they can do the things that they need to do. And so I want to talk about what this looks like in the Black and brown community. Oftentimes, unfortunately, and I am a person of faith, I grew up in the church, but we will look at one another and say, girl, you depressed? You having panic attacks? You need to fall on your knees, you're not praying enough. If that same person came to you and said, I have diabetes, you would say, yeah, I'm gonna pray for you. But did you go to your primary care physician? Did you go to the endocrinologist to get your sugar checked? Are you taking the metformin and the Farxiga that they prescribe to bring your diabetes down? Are you walking to lose weight? We're going to say all of those things that they need to do to stay healthy. But if a person tells you they're dealing with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, we kind of ghost them. If they tell us, hey, I want to go to therapy, we might say, Black people don't go to therapy, right? People in the church don't go to therapy. And I tell people all the time, you can have Jesus, Allah, Buddha, and a therapist. They are not mutually exclusive, right? Because we have to do what we need to do to be emotionally well. And so that's really why I appreciate what Jay is doing, because he's bringing the real, right? We have to talk about this. We have to give people a space where this is normal. Someone told me earlier they liked my shirt. If you text, you might know what some of these letters mean. OMW means on my way to therapy, BRB, be right back. I try to normalize people doing what they need to be healthy. If that's therapy, if it's self-care, if it's medication, if it's having a peer support, we have to do these things. And we especially have to do it within the Black and brown community. Our children, Black and brown boys, Black and brown girls and boys are dying by suicide at a rate higher than they have ever died before. They're dying at rates higher than their Caucasian peers. So don't talk about we as a Black community are not dealing with suicide. We see it with our kids. We're seeing it in every field. And so I appreciate what you're doing, my brother. It's incredibly important. I want to bring you up here. He's like, now, can I come? I didn't know she was going to talk that long.
Take it easy on me.
So we want to have a conversation. While he's coming up, y'all been a little quiet. I know I threw a lot on you. I want you all to repeat after me real quick. These are two of my favorite statements. Y'all ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Say it like you mean it, y'all.
Yes.
Okay, good gracious. All right, here we go. Get a checkup
Get a checkup.
from the neck up.
From the neck up.
Get a checkup
Get a checkup.
from the neck up.
From the neck up.
Just like you would go for your physical every year, just like you would take your car to the dealership to get an oil change so your engine doesn't blow up, you have to do that for your mind. Imagine if each of you had a yellow or orange decal or light on your forehead like your car does when you're about to run out of gas. Even if you're not dealing with a mental health concern, you still need to be emotionally well. When we ignore our wellness and we run out of emotional gas and emotional energy, we get to a place where we're not well. We have to focus on that. The second thing I want to have you say out loud to me, self-care is not selfish.
Self-care is not selfish.
Let's say that again. Self-care is not selfish.
Self-care is not selfish.
We have to begin to make ourselves a priority, not only for our physical health, but our mental health. Some of us, if I were to say to you, this piece of paper is your priorities in terms of investing in your emotional well-being. How many of you are at the top of the list? You're at the top. How many of you are in the middle of the list? How many of you are at the bottom of the list? How many of you are not even on the page? You allow any and everything else to come before your own emotional well-being. We have to focus on that, right? So we're going to have a conversation, aren't we? I'm going to give this to you. You're asking me questions first? Am I asking you questions? All right, here you go.
I guess one of the questions I have is about self-care. How much should you do that? Do you set a schedule for that daily? Just had a couple questions about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question. So his question was, how often should you engage in self-care? So you're an athlete. You're incredibly in great shape.
They used to get that.
Okay, you're still looking like an athlete. All right. So
Your husband hears you talking. Your husband hears you talking.
my husband knows I'm going home with him.
Okay.
We got 30 years. So I ask you that because as an athlete, did you have practice?
I did.
How often did you have practice? Every day. All day. Sometimes you had 2 a day.
That's right.
So same thing with your self-care. You want to engage in self-care. Self-care is a practice that you engage in often and regularly. You make it a part of your being. But you also want to have tiers of self-care, right? What do you do daily? What do you do when you've had kind of an off day? What do you do when you've had what I call a DEFCON crisis level threat day? So you want to have tiers. The same thing you want to do, you want to tell other people, what's your self-care? What are you doing? Because sometimes we forget, we deprioritize ourselves, or when we get in a place where we're depressed, we are experiencing anxiety or other symptoms, we don't do our self-care. And I may have to come to you and say, Jay, you remember you told me your self-care was doing yoga, taking walks, and journaling. And I say, are you doing those things? And you may say, I'm not. And so sometimes we need people to help us be accountable to our self-care, but do it regularly. So we said we're going to have this conversation. And the question I have for you is, what made it okay for you to seek help? What allowed you to give yourself permission to do that?
Well, I guess it was the event I had, March 23rd. And before that time, I didn't do anything with self-care or connection with people. And when I went through that episode, it was so scary to me. And having played football, I was like, it must be CTE. That's the first thing you think of. And it wasn't. You know, it was just as normal as tearing an ACL or, you know, breaking an ankle. But I didn't know that. I had those stigmas myself. You know, whenever someone told me that, I was just like, oh. So, you know, you talk about the brain, everybody's so afraid of them. And, you know, it was out of necessity for me because, you know, I had a panic attack. I walked out of a building. I left a job, the top college football job in America. And it was the right thing. Just looking at it today, just looking back, my daily schedule and the different things that I'm trying to do, I mean, it's a life changer for me. And that's the reason why I'm doing it. I'm a part of this cause. And it's so important every day that we take care of ourselves. And you start with yourself. They say put your air mask on first. You know, you've got to take care of yourself first and fill that reservoir every day. Let me see what I got here. If you see someone going through, like, you spoke on it, going through problems, what are the telltale signs and what do you do? You know, is there a list of things that you kind of go through?
So the question is, what if someone you know, family, friend, coworker, even your frenemy, right? You don't want to see your frenemy go through this either. So first of all, we have to recognize the signs and symptoms. So if you're concerned that someone's experiencing anxiety or depression, first of all, we're going to look for symptoms that are physical, behavioral, and psychological. When someone's experiencing a mental health concern, they typically have signs and symptoms in those three domains.